Hiya, welcome to Darren in the Studio. Thank you for swinging by for another video. This time round, we're going to be looking at another year. And if you've seen the thumbnail, you'll already know what that year is going to be. We've already done 1973 for 50 years ago. We've also done 1983 for 40 years ago. And we're looking now at 1993, some 30 years ago. 1993. We're looking at 10 albums in my personal collection from 1993, and the majority of these albums, I've got to be honest, the majority of this stuff I actually bought as new releases, or certainly the year that they came out 30 years ago, back in 1993, and that makes me feel really, really old, because I am really, really old. So we are saying happy birthday to all these albums. They're all turning 30 years old this year, 2023. These albums are 30 years old. They're all in alphabetical order, and like I said, I've chosen 10 out of my collection. I went through the collection today, and the list was very, very long that I originally had to choose from, and if I did all of them, it'd be more like a Netflix series, and we don't want to be here that long. I know you don't. You've got other videos to watch. So just 10, as always. Just picked it down to 10, got it down to 10, and I've chosen albums, not necessarily my favourite albums of that year, but just, some highlights in 1993, some 30 years ago. So here we go. Alphabetical order as well. So we're starting with a band which had a bit of a comeback at the back end of the 80s with an album called Pump. I think that came out in 1989. And I think this was the follow-up to that album. It came out about 4 years later, Aerosmith. It's the Get a Grip album, turning 30 years old in 2023. It's hard to believe that this album is that old. I don't think this album has aged at all. It really does stand up, and a lot of hits on this album as well. There's the track listing for you. A lot of hits on this album. Eat the Rich was big, Get a Grip, Fever, Living on the Edge, Crying was a massive hit on this album. Crazy also. Can't Stop Messing, great little album, this one. This is out on the Geffen label. Bought this as a brand new release when it came out. Hard to believe this album is 30 years old. Aerosmith and Get a Grip. Next up, here's an album which came out in 1993 from somebody who had almost kind of been forgotten. Kiss fans will know that Kiss didn't really put anything out in 1993. It was a bit of a hiatus year for them. But Peter Criss resurfaced with a band called Criss. And Peter played the drums and sang, and some of the other members sang as well. And he was signed to a little record label in California called Tony Nicole Tony Records, and put out an album called Criss. At first there was an EP that came out, which I have up here. I'll just quickly get it for you. This EP came out first as a bit of a teaser. Then after that, a full album was released. Now, I don't have an official copy of the Peter Criss album from 1993, but what I do have is this promo disc of the album. Now this, a lot of you will be looking and saying, well, that's just a CDR. And it is a CDR. It's a TDK CDR, but it's one of the original CDRs. Way before CDRs became popular for home use, what they call the consumer. They were made, CD recordables were sort of made for production companies, really, for professionals, if you will. And this is a CDW12 TDK CDR made by CD House, Cahuga Boulevard, West State, Los Angeles, California, for Tony Nicole Tony Records, 1600 Ventura Boulevard. Does that mean street? I don't know. And then it gives a phone number. There's no other information. The back's just blank. I won't tell you where I got this from, but this is not just your average CDR. This is an original Peter Criss, Tony Nicole Tony promo CD disc from 1993. Because back in 1993, promos were still being really sort of put out on vinyl and also on cassette, like a record store or a radio station would receive a cassette version of it, and they would sort of make copies from that and put that out if they were going to play it. But here we are, an official CDR. Before, like I say, before CDRs were really popular and made available for the consumer, they were originally like this. Get a close up on that. And I've looked online for more information. This company doesn't exist anymore. The actual building in California is actually the home of a, shall we say, an adult entertainment company. Maybe look it up. Tell me what you know. Next up, Sheryl Crow. Her sort of breakthrough album came out in 1993, 30 years ago for 2023. 30 years ago. Crazy. Sheryl Crow, Tuesday Night Music Club. This is a special limited edition version of it. It's a 2 CD version. This is what the sleeve originally looked like, if I can get it out. Like I said, this was the album that sort of broke Sheryl Crow, and she had a lot of hits off this album. All I Want to Do is on this record. That's what the sleeve looked like. Like I say, double disc set. This has a live 6-track album on it, recorded in London, Shepherd's Bush. Sheryl Crow's Tuesday Night Music Club. Like I said, a lot of hits on this. Run Baby Run is probably my favorite track on this album. Leaving Las Vegas was on here. All I Want to Do. A lot of good songs. Sheryl Crow, Tuesday Night Music Club, turning 30 years old in 2023. Next up, Guns N' Roses had sort of gone a little bit quiet in 1993. I think 1991 they had the Use Your Illusion albums come out, and then a couple of years later they brought this out, The Spaghetti Incident, which is basically a collection of some of their favourite songs done by them. Some good covers on here. Mark Bolan's Buick McCain's on here. A lot of good stuff on this. Since I Don't Have You was a big hit. They also do The Damned's New Rose. Guns N' Roses, the Spaghetti Incident, turning 30 years old this year in 2023. This is an original Geffen label release. I don't know how rare this is. I've never actually seen this ever on vinyl. It must be available on vinyl. Next up, a bit of vinyl for you. Mick Jagger had a solo album out in 1993. Now, the Rolling Stones had sort of gone very, very quiet around about this time. And Mick had, I think this was his third solo album, if I remember rightly. This is Wandering Spirit from 1993, turning 30 years old in 2023. This has some great songs on here. It's a really good album, this one. Also, Lenny Kravitz is on it, and it's produced by Rick Rubin, of course, of the Deaf American fame, and produced by Mick Jagger as well. 1993, Mick Jagger's Wandering Spirit solo album. Next up, Aimee Mann, her album Whatever came out in 1993. Great little record this, and I remember buying this. She had a big hit off this album called I Should Have Known. This is an original, I think this is on the Imago label, or Imago. Someone will tell me if I've got it wrong. Aimee Mann's Whatever album. I know Aimee in recent years has been suffering from serious hearing loss through tinnitus and whatnot. I think she's getting back to health again now. But this is 30 years ago this came out. I think, I'm not sure, but I think this was her debut album. Aimee Mann, Whatever. A lot of good songs on here. 4th of July's on here, one of my favourites on here, 50 Years After the Fair. Like I said, the big hit, I Should Have Known, is on here. Good little album. Get a chance, pick this up. Aimee Mann, Whatever, turning 30 years old in 2023. Next up, I showed you earlier this, the Guns N' Roses album, which, like I said, is basically a collection of their favourite songs that they did cover versions of, and the Ramones were at it as well in 1993 with this album. This is Acid Eaters. Great little album this, a lot of big records on here. Journey to the Centre of the Mind, Substitutes on here. 7 and 7 is the love track that Alice Cooper also recorded. I think I've got 7 and 7 is by various people about 3 or 4 times. Have You Ever Seen the Rain? Of course, the Creedence Clearwater track. Ramones, Acid Eaters. This again is an original 1993 album. This is on, I think they were on the Chrysalis label, weren't they, here in the UK? Yeah, on the Chrysalis label. Nice little original. Like I said, most of these albums I actually bought as new releases, and this was no different. Great little album, this. Next up, a band that you might not know. Seen this band a couple of times live. More recently, I think this year, I think we saw them at the Call of the Wild Festival here in the UK. Good little band, Romeo's Daughter. This is their second album, Delectable. Really great album, this. They had a big sort of hit with their first album, and Heart did a cover of one of their songs. I think it was Wild Child. They did a cover of, and it sort of made them very, very famous. This is Lee Matty, the vocalist of Romeo's Daughter. She still performs with Romeo's Daughter, as does this particular chap down here. I can't remember his name, do apologise. But he still performs in the band as well. Romeo's Daughter, Delectable. This is on the Music for Nations label, which I think was an American setup. I think so. There's a nice little shot of Lee Matty there. This is the original. I'll show you the vinyl of it. Original Music for Nations label. Again, I bought this as a new release. I've got their first album as well. The first album's a little bit more poppy, pop rock, and this sort of solidifies things a little bit more. Romeo's Daughter, the Delectable album, turning 30 years old in 2023. Next up, one of my favourite albums by this particular artist, and if you've seen my Dwight Yoakam video, you'll know which one I'm talking about. Came out in 1993, because that's the theme of this video. This is Dwight Yoakam, and this is the This Time album. Now, Dwight had a lot of success with this album. He really, really did. Produced by his long-term producer, Pete Anderson, who also plays guitar on this album. This is one of my favourite, not just my favourite, one of my favourite Dwight Yoakam albums, but one of my favourite albums I've got in my collection. 1993, This Time from Dwight Yoakam, Pocket of a Clown, 1,000 Miles from Nowhere, Home for Sale, This Time, Two Doors Down, Ain't That Lonely Yet, King of Fools, Fast as You, Try Not to Look So Pretty, it's a beautiful song, Wild Ride, and Lonesome Roads. Not a bad number on this album at all. There's the track listing. Again, bought this as a brand new release. This will be an original, I'm going to say the record label correctly, Reprise. Because all the way through my Dwight Yoakam video, I kept saying Reprise. I suppose we'd call it Reprise here in the UK, but it's Reprise. Through Warner Brothers. Dwight Yoakam, this time turning 30 years old in 2023. Next up, and last but certainly not least, because we're going in alphabetical order, of course, a series on television that was very, very popular, and I'm not even sure whether it happens anymore, is the MTV Unplugged series. Now, bands used to clamour a little bit to get on there, and you had to be invited. A lot of big stars, big bands did an MTV Unplugged album, and I don't know whether this would be one of the first ones, but it was certainly a groundbreaking album at the time. This is Neil Young's Unplugged album. Not sure what year it was actually recorded. It probably says on here somewhere when it was recorded, but it certainly came out in 1993. Again, this is an original Reprise copy. Again, a lot of big records on here. The Old Laughing Lady, Mr. Soul, Like a Hurricane, The Needle and the Spoon. Sorry, The Needle and the Damage Done. The Needle and the Spoon is Lynyrd Skynyrd song. Harvest Moon, Transformer Man, Unknown Legend. Oh, wonderful stuff. Of course, this album came off of the back of his success with the Harvest Moon album, which is a fabulous record as well. Neil Young, the Unplugged album. Of course, a lot of bands, like I said before, a lot of bands and artists had the privilege, and it was a bit of a privilege, I think, for them, had the privilege of making an Unplugged album. Of course, Nirvana, a lot of good rock bands and rock artists, Nirvana, Eric Clapton, of course, Kiss did an MTV Unplugged as well. And I think these were also made into videos as well, and you could buy the actual video versions of them as well. But these were groundbreaking albums back in the day. And I'm not sure, like I said before, I'm not sure whether MTV Unplugged exists anymore, whether they actually still make those programs. They were obviously very, very big in the 80s. I think Kiss did theirs in about, sorry, not in the 80s, in the 90s. I think Kiss did theirs in about 95, something like that, 96. I'm sure it was about 95. Neil Young, Unplugged, part of the MTV Unplugged series. That's it. Thanks for swinging by for another video. Hope you enjoyed it. If you did, give us a thumbs up on the old like, and make sure you subscribe and all that kind of stuff. Tell your mates about the channel. We're just shy of 500 subscribers. It'd be great to get to 500 subscribers towards the end of 2023. That'd be absolutely superb. So until next time, look after yourselves, look after each other, and we'll see you again very, very soon for another video right here in the studio. See you in a bit. Ta-da.